Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in inviting Mr. Sanjay Dutt to deliver the inaugural address and inspire us as we step into the future of work 2025.
Very good morning. I don't know how to inspire you guys. One way to inspire you all that you all become millionaires by the time you leave the room. Will that work with a show of hands? How many are interested? Oh, you guys don't want money? You do want money, right? Yeah. What is the purpose of eventually, if you want to work and you want to leave and you want to do all of that, if you're not winning or you're not making an impact in your life or somebody else's life, right? So I'm going to make this conversation slightly more complicated, because simple is boring. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to talk about, first set the context that why this discussion is even more relevant today than it has been in the recent years. When you look at the future of business, there are a lot of questions that come to your mind. So what does business require? Business is based on demand fundamentals. Wherever there is consumption, demand for services, goods, etc., etc. The second aspect of business is capital. Third, to contribute and make that capital to work is talent. Jay covered it beautifully. And then you have infrastructure to harness capital, harness talent, and then you produce goods and services. So I call it as a factor of real estate. So if you were to define real estate in many ways, this would be a factor of production and services, because eventually, whether you're in a hotel, whether you're in a property, whether you're in a park, whether you're in a manufacturing unit of logistics, you're producing something. And even if you're in an office space, you're producing your services, creating, it's a production. So we've understood, but what is really important to understand is key components of capital and talent are fungible. When I say fungible, it means they can be taken anywhere in the world. So they're not static. So if you create an appeal to pull talent and capital, you can hijack the business, and therefore the impact can be devastating. There are 6 American corporations in India who have 65% of the global corporate workforce now in India. They came to India about 25 years ago, and they took a decision in the board meeting that they will cap India growth not exceeding 10%. They have exceeded 65%. In next 5 years, they will be 75% of the global workforce in India, which means talent, which means capital, like I said, is fungible. So now the capital is coming from India to India, from America, sorry, to India, likewise many other places. And there is also a domestic demand, which is also fueling. So you get the gist, what I'm getting at. So this is the context that I wanted to kind of put this first, because then only you can talk about the future of work. Since I belong to real estate, I can give you an example of real estate in the subsequent discussions. Coming to the very first opening by Subrat on those 3 questions that you were asked and the expressions that you all gave, if I was asked, I would give only one. Something which is very important that I've learned as a CEO. And that one qualification that somebody walks through the door to play a very important role in my organization is disruption management. And I tell you why this has become important. Over the last 3 decades, organizations like Blackstone, Vanguard, BlackRock, and many others are now have seats on the board. So that's a genesis. When they control the board and the equity, they dictate the landscape. So it starts from there. And what does that really mean? That means returning shareholders' value, which means it's all financial. That's a fundamental change I saw over the years. And that drives behavioral change in the organizations. And you must have come across many studies which says CEO's life, by the way, is not more than 3 years. Why is it happening? Because there is disruption somewhere. We know geopolitical disruptions already, the impact on manufacturing for China, the opportunities for Vietnam and India and many other. Disruption on IT has been to India's advantage. I've often said, whenever there is a global pain in IT, India tends to gain. Because there is a lull and freeze, and then eventually people want to cut costs. There is a cost arbitrage advantage because of talent dividend that we have, and we're able to grow on this. So I think this is a very important aspect, and I will pick up an example of real estate. So 50% of 80 million square feet of office space absorption in India is by American corporations. It was at one time 70 to 80%. So it has come down. It has not come down in volume, but because the domestic organization has scaled their businesses in India, so we are less dependent on American. There is still a very large percentage, but we are less dependent. This year in 2025, first half, Jan to June, 45% of the absorption was by Indian corporations, which is the likes of Zomato and others, and Swiggy's are growing, and therefore they're scaling their businesses. Many of them are e-commerce, etc., etc. So they're also changing the landscape. So when they need an office park, and 50% in American, we need to develop infrastructure which is global standards. So there is a national building code that we have in India, but if you're building future of work from infrastructure point of view, it has to have global safety standard, it has to have global environmental standard, it has to have global aspirations for multinational corporations. So when we see that, we see it from a different lens. And that costs money. So, and when we go into the construction and design, we have to bring talent from various parts of the world. When we use steel, when we use aluminium, so aluminium is dependent on Ukraine, by the way. A lot of commodities come from somewhere else. Coal comes from southern parts of Asia, and all culminate and contribute into a building of an infrastructure which is office park. Very simple thing. Because of recent trade war disruption, another capital impact happened in the country. The private equity which was coming to India stopped because they were not sure what will happen. It did have an impact on jobs and did have an impact on what the future holds for real estate funds, private equity, debt, and other organizations, because they were not getting capital. So if you don't have capital, how do you build infrastructure? Banks don't lend for land acquisition, NBFCs do, but banks don't lend. So, and that is done on purpose because they don't want you to borrow from bank for land and borrow from bank for construction, and you have your no investment in it. It just leads to speculation and risk because you have no skin in the game. It suddenly caused a problem in the supply side, in the real estate space. So it's disruption, the point that I was making earlier. We also saw environment impacting business. The Supreme Court of India came out with NGT ban and environment-related policy changes for the sector. It's disrupting everything. And for last 1.5 years, nearly 300 million square feet of office and residential homes were not approved, and they led to a shortfall and therefore a rise in real estate prices. It has an impact. Because of the scale and boom in the sector, there is a talent shortage, but more importantly, there is a serious skill shortage at the construction level. We are adapting new technologies, Jay spoke about it, composite, steel, other structures, precast technology, etc., but we don't have skills. So we struggle. On a larger note, if I may say, many of the businesses, because of these disruptions, through regulatory changes, through environment changes, through Supreme Court or High Court interventions, through global geopolitical angles, the businesses are being disrupted. So it becomes very, very relevant for training a workforce which is agile, the word came up, resilience, ability to adapt, and ability to, more importantly, demonstrate impact in a very short term. So this is very important. I personally feel most of the businesses are not viable. They're actually not viable because of these disruptions. The governance in the country has gone up, the compliances in the country have gone up. Just the cost of managing the environment has challenged every business house how to create 20% return on their investment. And if you're not there, you're not relevant anymore. So the lens that we use to measure your impact or work on business is purely financial, clearly financial. And if you're not creating an impact in this disrupted environment, you're not making progress for yourself as talent, which is future ready or not, or for the organization, which, as you know, will wind up if they don't scale and manage their operations properly. So I'm just going to touch quickly on these cyclical angles which are important for next 3 to 5 years point of view. There is a lot of technology that is disrupting. There is a lot of startups which are disrupting, and the recent data also conveys that almost every business is up for disruption. And there are businesses which are called old economy, and there are businesses which are called new economy. All of these have no clue what is the extent of damage or disruption that will happen. And therefore, how will you play a role in the organization? At a micro level, in the organization, you personally will face disruption from the manager that you're reporting into, from the management who thinks differently, even from the HR, mind you, because they have to deliver from the organization's point of view. So how are you managing those disruptions will become very important. The other challenge for this country which I face is the cost of doing business. You've all heard about ease of doing business, but let me tell you, the cost of doing business has fundamentally changed the games. And the biggest contributor to this cost of doing business is also the talent war, which is leading to high cost of talent. If you increase these salaries and overheads by 15% in a year, the CEOs of the businesses have to deliver 30% higher business return on the business to justify the 15% increase. Which means more stress on you, because you have to deliver business 35% higher every year to see your own Form 16 and say, I've got a good increase of 15%, right? And by the way, you're also, now since you're making money, you're spending money, right? Apparel, cosmetics, fashion, health, wellness, etc., and which is also causing inflation. And therefore, since it's causing inflation, you need more salary, right? Why not? So you have more salary, and then you have more 35% pressure of growth on yourself. So these businesses are caught in this dilemma, and you have to navigate your own career through this, partly self-created by all of you together, all of us together actually, and don't know how to manage or overcome this. All of this is leading to another challenge, which I see as a CEO, is the mental health. And I'm telling you, the biggest problem for the Gen Z in our world is this mental health. I know when we started our career, we had pretty no job, we had no management program, we had no such sessions. We were kicked on our butt and said, go and work and get some money. It was as simple as that. Okay? Options were, you become a salesman, you join police, you do IAS, IPS, army, sorted. Subsequently, things opened up. I think that generation was more resilient to shocks and setbacks, and the expectations were different. The generation today is mentally loading themselves with so much in terms of expectations that they're losing sense of direction. And if you don't control this, whether organizations or HR professionals, or indeed in our program to teach this generation how to navigate these seductions that they have in their mind for certain things, whether material or otherwise, this would be a big debate for subject in next 3 to 5 years. The biggest disruption to businesses will come from the people and not from businesses and geopolitical angles. Because they're not ready and they will not be able to cope, and because the cycles are shorter, they don't know how to navigate through those, how to overcome those, in a constant pressure of building their careers and building their aspirational lifestyle that they're so stated on. So I'm going to leave you all with a lot of questions to answer rather than answering them. But if there is an opportunity to shed light on how to go about it, there is a way. There is a way that you can create wealth for yourself and also a life for yourself. It's a balanced way, and I'm happy to have an off-stage conversation to have to do that, because otherwise the topic will go on for another 1 year. Thank you. Thank you so much for this.